Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson, distinguished speakers, and delegates. It gives me immense pleasure to extend to you a very warm welcome at the 27th Convergence India 2019. The session will be chaired by Mr. Nisarg Malde, Agent Tulsea. I would like to say a few lines about our chairperson. As one of the senior members at Tulsea, Nisarg leads our emerging markets initiative, licensing and projects focused in the digital domain. He works closely with clients and partner companies to generate and deliver solutions that include identifying and matching the right content with talent and executives in growing his high potential media and entertainment sectors. He extensively deals and negotiates with major international OTT platforms. Mr. Malde brings a strong passion for quality content to Tulsea. He comes from a background in science and commerce and has studied chartered accountancy. Now I would request him to please introduce all our speakers, briefly introduce all our speakers and take over the session. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first conference for broadcasting in the 27th Convergence India. This is the future of digital content, rise of social platforms and viewership. As you know, digital content is currently on the rise and we have more and more shows coming out every day. And with these shows coming out, you see more and more new creators, more and more new platforms coming out as well. And we have eminent personnel from these fields with us today. Let me introduce you to our keynote speaker for the day, Mr. Vasant Nath. Vasant has worked as an independent writer and director. He is currently based in Bombay. And as you may popularly know him, he's one of the writers of India's most watched digital show, Sacred Games. Along with Vasant, we have on the stage our lead speaker, Ms. Roshni Ghosh. Roshni is the VP Original Content with Eros now. She has extensively worked over the last 12 years in the content space and is responsible for bringing about few of the best shows the country has to offer currently. Along with Roshni, we have our speaker, Mr. Chiranjeevi Singh. Chiranjeev is the Director for Marketing, MediaKind for the Asia-Pacific region. And with him, he brings more than 31 years of experience in the ICT field. And the company MediaKind provides end-to-end solutions for immersive content in India. Let me start with a brief on how content is viewed today. We've always had linear television that all of us watched, but over the last few years, a lot of us have started watching content across various media, ranging from our laptops to our mobile phones. And the way we, sort of perceive this content has also become varied. We have content that ranges from genre to genre and language to language. These days, there are no language barriers when it comes to content. People in the north are watching content that's dubbed from Tamil. People in the south are watching Bhojpuri shows as well. So technically, there is no language barrier that is there these days. The only thing that we need to worry about is how relevant our content is to what we have going on in the market. And who better to talk about the relevance of content than one of the creators of the show, Sacred Games, Vasant? Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Vasant Nath. And as Nisarg very kindly introduced, yes, I was part of the writing team for Sacred Games, which I hope some of you have seen. So I'm sharing a message that I received on my Facebook Messenger from somebody who watched the show. And it's quite clearly over there. But as you can see, this gentleman is talking to me about how his father, who never really watches things like this, his father, who doesn't really watch shows like this, became a little fanboy asking repeatedly, "Dusra episode lagao zara." And kab aayega next season, you know? And I think the key thing over here is that he is a simple man who has been a government employee, and getting him engaged to any kind of TV movie is not that easy. And, but you guys did it. Thank you for this gripping TV series. And, you know, he carries on that way, you know. So, for me, who came to Mumbai 14 years ago to be a writer-director, who has always faced the challenge of finding my main language of expression in English and having to configure myself to meet a demand of my home audiences. I never really expected to receive a message like this from somebody who I never expected to break through to this boy's father, let's just say. So, you know, when I thought about what I can share with you in terms of a slide, I chose this message because I think that it made me think about what is it that people like me who were involved with writing sacred games, from our perspective, what was it that we did differently that allowed this show to have this kind of a reach? So I think immediately what I can tell you is that we knew that when we were going in to write a Netflix show, suddenly the road is wide open. And we can, you know, the goals that we saw in front of us were the hit TV shows from around the world. Narcos, name the ones that are your favorite. But, you know, for us, since our genre was a crime show, Narcos was the big looming goal, but it was also our biggest nightmare because, you know, do we dare aspire? But at the same time, I think that the general atmosphere that Netflix also created for us in all our discussions with them, all our interfacing with them, I think said that, okay, if we really want to reach far, we are being given the mandate to do it. And I think that all of us in the writing team, Varun Grover, Smita Singh Khan, myself, and our showrunner, Vikram Aditya Motwani, we had all grown up in our careers really admiring strong content and strong storytelling. So I think that one of the first questions we asked ourselves was, what language is this show going to be in? You know, so is it going to be in Hindi? Is it going to be in Hindi and English? And I think the next step was that, are we really going to put it out there in whatever language is appropriate? And this was a question which I think all of us as writers have really looked forward to, a situation where we can really put out material which has an end form which is true to life and true to the truth that it is depicting. So for me, after a year of going through the writing process, the real moment where I felt that we were onto something was when I saw the first episode still in edit, and I saw the actor Girish Kulkarni speak his lines in Marathi, you know. And immediately I said, we're onto something, boss. ये नहीं देखा मैंने पहले, क्योंकि Marathi character in the midst of everything else which is there in the show, bits of English, bits of Hindi, bits of Bombaya, this is the right mix, and this is going to ring true. I had an intuition, but nobody knew until the show dropped finally. So, and you know, I think that responses like this kept coming in. Now, I think that having the mandate to reach higher was for us interpreted in our minds as we wrote the show in a couple of different ways. I think that while we wrote it, we were secure in our, this expectation that other people like ourselves who love Narcos, who love House of Cards, they are going to like this show. We are speaking to them. We are really hoping that we pass their test, right? The other thing which I think that we all wanted to believe, but we did not know would work out until the show actually came out, was that would the general audience, everybody who sees this show, who have never heard of Narcos before, would they react to a strong story? And I think that for me, as a writer, one of the greatest validations has been that today you give a strong story to somebody where you have a commitment to the truth. They are going to respond to it. If you challenge them, they are going to respond to it. They are not only going to respond to fantasy, and I think there is a place for fantasy in our stories. I think that we listen to stories to escape, but we also listen to stories to engage, to respond. I think to be engaged alongside being entertained. I've always dreamed of, in my day job, being able to push stories like that. And I think that Sacred Games allowed us to really strive for that, you know. And I think that while we were writing the show, we had no real objectivity in terms of knowing whether what we are doing is right or not. I think that what Varun and Smita kept really alive between each other was to question whether something is working or not. And I think the question we kept on asking is that, is it surprising us or not? You know, the usual, we didn't get a pushback on that. I think that Netflix turned out to be a very good partner, bringing their expertise of storytelling to the fore. Hearing from Netflix that they had not seen a character like Cuckoo before was a very, very big validation for us to keep pushing. Hearing from Netflix that, look, over here, you guys are trying to be violent for the sake of being violence, for the sake of being violent. If it's part of your story, we'll buy it. If it's not, we won't. I mean, I think that those kind of guidances helped us achieve what you finally saw. I think that what I'm contextualizing in terms of our discussion that is to follow is that I think that with OTT, we have come to what in my career is the second time I have seen this energy poured into storytelling. The first time was when I had just started my career and independent films had started coming out. People were making films outside the studios, and suddenly it felt like new, fresh storytelling is going to find a place in the theaters, and there's going to be an economic model to sustain it. But it did not last. By the time I actually found my feet in Mumbai, that bubble had already burst, and nobody had faith in independent films anymore. I think what's different right now is that the reach of OTT is so great, the potential is so great, that I feel that this run of the demand for good storytelling is here for a while. And I think that as a writer, what I think, I find it that it is my privilege and also my great responsibility to really push the boundaries over and beyond what we have achieved with Sacred Games. I think that there's some wonderful things that are going on right now. Is that I think that one of the axioms we can take from the Sacred Games experience is that people do get excited by the truth, you know. I mean, I've written this so many times in my notes over here that I'll just stress it once again, is that, you know, if you just look at the material of Sacred Games, Vikram Chandra, who wrote the novel, researched it for 10 years. And then we worked on the adaptation for a full year. And we drew from the experiences of a crime reporter who has been working for the past 10 years researching police stories. So the amount of verified truth that has been drawn in order to bring you a visceral experience and be fascinated, I think that that should serve to reinvigorate our this strand of storytelling alongside the fantasy that we are used to, where a cop is turned into a superhero. I think that it's great to have the validation that an ordinary person can be just as fascinating. A Sartaj Singh can be just as fascinating. So I think it is a fantastic time for content. And my colleagues over here will also tell you from the perspective of their own experiences, is that we are now struggling to meet the supply to meet this demand. We're struggling to find the supply of more writers, more creators, and it's suddenly as if there is a huge swimming pool waiting to be filled with water so that everybody can do a tremendous butterfly in it. Horrible metaphor, but the other thing which came out of our discussion just before lunch, we were all sitting together, and I think that we are also in a realm of a very new social experience of stories. We were talking about how when we were growing up, we were all from single screen homes where whatever was being served used to be something that the whole family used to watch. Now everybody in our families can really choose what they want to watch, but at the same time, something that you watch, you want the other person to watch it so that you can talk about it, because it doesn't feel complete until you actually say, what a cool guy Pablo Escobar is. You want to sit down and you want to have that discussion. You want to have that same discussion about Guy Tonde. So I think that with the amount of material that is available, we are also starting to participate in these stories as audiences. So, as much as this is an important time for creators like me, this is a fantastic time for audience members like you to react, to respond, to create a buzz around things, because ultimately I think that not only does that lead to excitement, not only does it lead to more stories coming, a demand for stories, but I actually feel that it is actually a fantastic time for even social change based on stories. I mean, the power behind stories today and the reach, I feel, has applications on so many levels. And I hope we can take the discussion into some of these areas. I'll keep it short because we have such a lovely bank of experience over here. And happy to field any questions when we get to that point. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening.
Hi, is this okay? Okay, so my name is Roshni Ghosh. I head content at Eros now, which is an OTT platform. Eros, of course, has been in the movie business for many years, in the movie production and distribution business. So the platform already has about 14 million subscribers because of the sheer strength of movies, and now we're doing some originals. So we've just started out with a series called Smoke, which had a very interesting cast. It was nicely written. It was very different from the content that I'm used to creating because I'm a hardcore television person. And of the last 3 years, I've been in digital, I've been dabbling. I was with a startup called Array, which was started by Ronnie Screwvala. That was very interesting. We did some fun shows for YouTube, which was a great experience, to be honest. And now I'm in the proper SVOD subscription business. I'm just going to take off from where Vasant left off, actually, quite a few insights in what he said. And I keep asking myself that this whole digital content business, and we all keep saying the future is digital is going to take over everything. It's tough. It's a really tough business. Being on the other side of where Vasant is tough. Subscriptions don't come easy. When they do come, they go away very quickly. So I think according to the Boston Consultancy Group report, 80% of Indian subscribers unsubscribe within the first 6 days. So it's tough getting people on, and then of course, tougher getting them to stick on. And as we all know, making content is becoming very expensive, thanks to people like Anurag and Vasant and all of them. It's very expensive. But what is really good, I think, about when I ask myself, how is this different from television? I think one of the differences, if you are on the inside as a maker, when I commission shows, I see that today the writers become very important. And this has not happened in India till now. The writer is very important, and this has happened because of digital content and everybody trying to make, so digital content in essence is a little bit like TV because it's serialized. But then the brief we give to every content creator as a platform is make it cinematic. So it shouldn't look like TV, right? So the first thing I say, being from a very hardcore TV background, is don't make it look like TV. That's the first thing we say, right? So then what does it look like? It looks like cinema, is what we want to believe. It should look cinematic. It should look rich. It should look beautiful. At the same time, I think the writing has become extremely difficult and therefore extremely important. Because a movie, please correct me, Vasant, if I'm wrong, is easier to write than a series. And he mentioned Narcos. I did a workshop with one of the co-creator of Narcos, in fact, and I remember him saying that a movie is 3 acts. So you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. In a series, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end in the series, and each episode needs its 3 acts as well. It's very difficult to sustain interest through an episode and then sustain that interest over the series. So essentially, I think, of course, that is a writer and creator's job and responsibility. But it is encouraging to see that the writer is becoming important. I think in the evolution of content, in India, we have jumped a step, because I think if I compare it with America, I think between network television and Netflix, there was cable television, which had very good content, and I think a lot of the great writers started moving towards cable channels like Showtime and AMC and shows like, Breaking Bad and Walking Dead and all of those shows, which were cable shows. So I think there was a transition. I think the writing was way superior to network television in cable, because that was also subscriber-driven. It was not advertiser-driven. So the minute you move on to a subscription model, it is expected that your content will be stronger, will be better, will be more cinematic. So that happened over there, and then of course there was HBO, which is probably the highest in terms of, I still think that HBO shows are next level and way above any platform. So, I think, and in fact, I've read in various places that one of the reasons, one of the benchmarks that Netflix had was HBO. The idea was to do content that was better than HBO, but to put it out binge. So you're essentially binging TV content. That's where that changed the game. So in India, I don't think we've had that smooth transition. I think it's been a bit of a jump from TV. We've jumped to like this very sophisticated, or we're trying to make it very sophisticated, very realistic, as Vasant pointed out, content. Well, TV is very aspirational in India. It's more fantastical. It really has very, very little to do with reality, unless you're watching reality TV. That also has very little to do with reality. So television is more aspirational, still is, and honestly, television still has a bigger reach than anything else, cinema, be it cinema or be it digital content. But I think now the trend is more towards realism. If you look at even movies last year, if you see the movies that did well, it was the movies that were smaller, that had stronger storylines, where the characters were marketed more than the stars, and the bigger movies failed, right? We all watched the movies, right? We watched Thugs of Hindustan, didn't we? We did. No. So nobody watched. Very good. You saved money. That is very good, very good. So but there were movies like Badhaio, which did very well, which were way smaller. So you spend smaller, you invest in the right things, which is story, which is your characters, your writing, your performance, and you have a hit. So that's what we saw, right? Which is very encouraging. And I think digital content from the beginning, whether it was YouTube or whether it's now, it's always been a sort of a one-on-one medium, more than TV, where TV is in India still a family watching medium. Digital is more of a one-on-one experience, which is why it's more real. You don't have to aspire to be the perfect bahu or the perfect mother or the perfect father. You can just be who you are. It's okay. You're not perfect, right? And absolutely. And well, also, I mean, that is also because in India right now, the last I checked, 70% of content is still watched on mobile devices. So it's still a very one-on-one intimate experience. Sorry, I digressed a bit. So basically what I was saying is that I think the trend is more towards realism. And that's reflecting in content. I think as a content creator, as a person who commissions content, I do want to keep it more relatable than I did when I was in TV. I definitely want to keep it more intimate. Doesn't necessarily mean more violent or more sex, just more intimate, more you, more who you really are. I think those are kind of the briefs that we give when we're commissioning content. Of course, there will be mythos, there will be fantasy, there will be a lot of scale, but I don't see what the point is right now, given that we're still watching on small screens, but that is going to happen as well. Also, as projected, by 2020, I think 50% of digital viewership will be rural. So there will be a whole new, that's the next billion. So there will be a different market, a bigger market. Content will change. So what we are seeing now, whether it's Sacred Games or Mirzapur, I think there will be a shift as well, or there will be perhaps more different kinds of content. It won't just be the premium, you know, slightly intellectualized content. It will be a lot of, you know, stuff that we can snack on, that we can enjoy when we're traveling, shorter stuff, easier watching stuff, all of that. But anyway, essentially, yes, good times for content makers, very encouraging times, good storytelling, good talent out there. Need more grooming, need more schools for writers. I think that the talent exists in this country, but since now we're talking about really good content, and I believe that it all starts with the writing, there definitely need to be more institutes. There aren't enough colleges in India to teach people how to write, honestly. So a lot more mentoring, a lot more workshops, a lot more colleges. And I think we should be churning out really good content in the next few years if we can take some of the discipline that TV has, which is to economize and shoot efficiently and produce a show efficiently, and take some of the, you know, the visual qualities or the storytelling techniques that cinema has. And essentially, digital content is really a combination of the two. And I think both are needed. And yeah, of course, what we need most is subscribers. And yeah, and also I think since I'm talking about it, perhaps the balance is going to be for a while, like it is right now with like Hotstar and all of the others, as you've seen. It's AWOD as well as SWOD. So perhaps for a while that is going to be the future, because subscriptions will run thin, I think, for a while. 40 or 50 million by 2023, I think that's the projection. By 2023, there'll be 40 to 50 million. But trust me, it's expensive. Making content is very expensive. So I think advertising will also need to support it. Yeah, that's it pretty much. I don't know if this was, did that make a lot of sense? Yes? Okay. So I'll take questions, whatever questions you have later. Thank you very much.
Our last panelist has just joined us today. Welcome, Anurag. We're glad to have you finally with us. So, Anurag is the founder and CEO of NewsVoir and has spent over 17 years with leading corporates and global entities in India. He has been driving businesses and greenfield projects in tech and communication space, turning them into sustainable and profitable brands. We'll have him on the stage soon to share a few words with us. But before Anurag, let's please have Chiranjeev on stage and share his perspective in the technology that is required to support the content.
Well, I'm happy that Anurag joined us, because I was feeling lost. You know, I had three creative people next to me, and I am the dry technology person sitting there. So we were having a discussion before we came here, and it was more in terms of what's your personal preference, how do you see content, where do you find content, and then we started talking about each other, what we have been doing, and then I was getting one surprise after the other. When Vasant said, I'm the writer, yes, I read the brief, but I didn't really connect those dots, saying that, okay, he's the writer for the Sacred Games. And then Roshni came in, Nisarg came in. So since, I'm here more from a technology perspective, so maybe I'll just give you some dry facts also. Roshni touched upon it in terms of, where the digital media is going or digital content is going. But if you look at some of the challenges that the industry has, there was a survey done by Adobe in Q4 of 2018, which 42% of the consumers that were surveyed said that live on OTT is not good enough. The quality is not good enough. There is a lot of latency, and the technology has to keep up. Technology has to really come up to speed in order to deliver the experience, the immersive experience that as a consumer, I or you are looking for. Right now, that is still leaves a room for improvement in any case. But this is going in the right direction. So by 2023, there is a prediction that over 77 million users will be on OTT and on digital content streaming. Out of that, if you look at about 28 million of those subscribers will be in US, but India will have a fair share of it. It's going to be about 16 million subscribers in India who will be actually streaming media on different devices that they have. So again, in order to give that type of experience, the technology has to evolve. It has to come closer to you. It has to make it into an experience that you really enjoy. It's getting there. So if you really look at, right now, if I'm watching something on the way to home, if I'm traveling, let's say on a metro or in a cab, you are watching a show on your small screen, on your tablet or on your phone. When I walk into my home, all the devices are connected. I should be simply able to swipe and continue watching that, the show that I was watching from the point where I left off onto my large screen. This is where, the technology has to take it. So from the technology perspective, you need to make sure that it's open architecture, it's cloud-based, microservices architecture, so that you get the real experience without having to invest hugely in the infrastructure. You still have to do some investments, but it has to be realistic, because as Roshni also touched upon, content is very expensive, but delivery of that content is equally expensive also. So we need to make sure that we give the real value proposition from a technology perspective, so that the content reaches your desired audience in the most cost-effective manner, but with the quality and the experience that you're looking for. Coming back to touching on the social aspect of it. So we talked about how we in fact Vasant and I had a good discussion just over lunch, where he was saying, I said, I'm a person, if I look at my home, my kids watch shows all the time, but I am a person who still goes and looks for what's on TV first. And if I don't find something good, then I'll try and see what shows I can watch on Netflix or on Amazon or whichever streaming service I subscribe to. And how do I go about finding that? So there are a couple of things. One, either I just keep on searching and finding the content that I would really like to watch, or I will go with someone recommending me, okay, in fact, I was telling him, I watched Sacred Games not immediately when it came out. I only watched it after, a couple of people talked about it to me. So that's the social influence that at least I saw, that someone said, this show is something you must watch. And I went, and when I started seeing the first episode, I actually sat through all the episodes in one go and did a binge watching. Normally, that is not what I do, because our life is pretty busy. But then you get hooked onto it. But I only went to that show because someone recommended it to me. And that's what, the social recommendation is important. While, when you're, now if I go to Netflix or I go to Amazon, it'll say just because you watch this particular show, you can go and, this is something you will like. So that's the recommendation engine that is there at the back, which technology does. But then the other thing which is equally important is how do I want to watch these shows or the media or the content on online. What's changing is also how you want to share that experience of that digital content, watching with your peers, with your friends. So the way the industry is going, people are now actually doing watching collaboratively. So, I'm watching a show, one of my friends is watching the show, we compare notes, we sort of give comments to each other. That's what the social, the social aspect of the entire digital content watching comes in as well. So, from a technology perspective, it has to make that happen also. Because I should be able to create a peer group and say, okay, this is the show I'm watching, by the way, can we watch it together? So let's take an example of a live F1 race which is streaming right now. Nowadays, with the 4K technology and the 360-degree viewing experience, you can actually watch the same race from different angles. So for example, I'm watching, I have my own personal preference of a driver. So I want to watch race from that driver's car. Whereas my friend, who has his own personal preference, another driver, so he is watching from his driver or his preferred driver's angle, and we are watching it on that. And when, let's say, during the race, if both the cars pass each other, I can actually turn around and wave to each other. So that's the type of experience that is going to happen or is already happening. So, so if you have seen, with the 360-degree 6K tiled type of experience that we are able to bring to the market now, it actually really helps people get immersed into that whole experience. So it's not just about watching the content; it's also being part of that that immersive experience that's happening out there. So this is where I feel the industry is also going. This is where all these creative people are creating that content for us, but from a technology perspective, we are trying to also make sure that we bring that experience to the end consumer to really make it worth their while to take out that time and sit down and watch a particular digital content. So these are a few things which I wanted to touch upon today. I'll be happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
Thank you for the insight in the technology, which we seldom think about. It's really good to know, the advancements that are being made. Now we'd like to have Anurag share a few words with us.
Good afternoon. It's really nice to see a very lively audience despite having a session after the lunch. So thank you very much. We happen to be living in very interesting times. This is a time when we have probably, we are seeing unfolding of what we could have only imagined like 20, 30 years back. I remember when I was a kid, I used to be a huge fan of Star Wars and a lot of sci-fi movies. In Star Wars, we used to see these, the Star Warians, talking on these mobile phones and using all different kind of gadgets. And we could just think of it and imagine that if something would be a reality someday. And this is a time when we are actually, we are seeing that unfolding. I remember sometime in the early 90s, I saw a movie called Total Recall of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think I can see a lot of you nodding, So in that movie, there was a scene where they show that a lot of these windows and the walls of the house, they are all, screens where you can change those scenes and pull up whatever you would want to see. At that time, it was only imaginary, right? It was only an imagination. But today, this is precisely what is unfolding, and these are real exciting times that we can see it happen in front of our eyes. So probably, people who are between the age group of 30 and 50 years, they have seen this transition happening from 60s, 70s, or 80s, and seeing how the things are taking shape and reality today. So today, when we talk about, the projection, the OLEDs, they have become as large as probably 220, 250 inches. That's huge. Like, that's pretty much covering the entire wall of this hall. Imagine, that is what is unfolding. And a lot of these OLEDs, they can actually be folded, right? They're as flexible and as thin as paper. A lot of you would know they're coming in with, they're virtually, they're wafer thin. They're about 1 mm thin that you can fold, you can roll up like a sheet of paper, and you can carry it with, with you. So these, so these are very interesting times, and I feel now the content is actually going to move out of our smartphones and computer screens to smart devices and walls of our houses and the offices. So that is the next big step, and this is where the content is likely to move and is going to get consumed. The other part, when we talk about how is the content and the consumption of the content changing, we have to see that the content is now being used in smaller formats. So when we talk about the OTTs, the over-the-top formats, VODs, everything is virtually now moving towards these smaller formats. The younger generation, which is consuming a lot of this content on YouTube, they're engaging with these YouTubers to the extent where they think that these YouTubers, they understand them better than their peer group. Largely because the format of these videos and the way the engagement is happening. So not only these YouTubers, they're understanding, what the consumer really needs and delivering it to them, but they're also engaging with them, largely through text and various, various other elements of engagement. This is where this entire engagement is moving towards. We also talk about social media and how the social media change is sort of coming about. Facebook is something that all of us have seen growing in last 4 to 5 years. All of us are a part of it. But what is changing there? Something that we have clearly noticed is that while it was this revolution was started by the youngsters, by the youth, but that is changing immensely now, because now you would see the youth is moving in a different direction. While the Facebook may like to believe that the youth is still there, but they have now started gravitating towards Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, and so on and so forth. Similarly, when we started talking about the movies, or even for that matter, reading of books, the whole TLDR concept of too long, did not read, is now everything is being synthesized into summaries now, and these summaries are being consumed on the go. People, they don't have time really to sort of spend a lot of time either on the books or on video content, so everything is being now crunched into shorter formats. So shorter format is something which is likely to uphold the future, and that is where we are going to see a lot of engagement. Most of the large players like Google, they are largely now focusing on video, voice, and vernacular. So from the Indian perspective, the regional languages and the vernacular is going to be the next big thing. That is where a lot of engagement, volumes, and the business is going to happen. So these are going to be the drivers of growth. These are a few cents from my side, and I think I will leave it to the panel to add to it. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your perspective on how you see the media and entertainment industry moving forward. So now for some time, I'd like to have some question answers between the panelists, and then we'll leave it open to the audiences and they can ask their questions. All right, we'll start with questions from the audiences then. Anybody? Any questions? No one?
About the monetization challenges that we have. So how do you collectively address those challenges?
Monetization is the biggest challenge. I think one way to address it is, like I said, AVOD and SVOD, a combination of both, so that advertising can support some of the content. Other than that, it is going to be subscription all the way. I mean, that is how the model is. I can't think of anything other than advertising, honestly. I mean, eventually that's what it'll have to be. And then there's distribution, of course, which brings in a certain amount of revenue. And I mean, at this point, for SVODs in India, distribution is very important. I think the telco companies are a massive sort of outlet for the content that we're making. As you know, that the content which is premium and you have to pay for on these SVODs is available for free on a lot of these, right, on Jio, on Airtel, right? So I think eventually that is what is, and anyway the telco companies, eventually that's going to be what the game is going to be about. It's really also going to be about the service providers, the mobile, you know, and not just the content providers, you know what I mean? So yeah, I think those would be the biggest sources of monetization right now, distribution and that, advertising.
So ma'am, as a consumer, if we talk about managing as a consumer, if we talk about managing subscription to so many platforms is a quite challenging thing. We know about few premium platforms, but how do you see that? How we as a consumer can, like with the new, if you go about TV, that has been managed by a Dish or Tata Sky or something. So are you
again
like
the
as a community
distributors?
planning to?
They're the distributors. So
Okay.
yeah. So basically, they'll have to pricing is very important. And I think that eventually you'll have to fight the cable pricing at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Because eventually that's what you want. You want to replace the habit of television watching, right? So essentially cable pricing is what you'll have to eventually replace. But Airtel, Dish TV, all of your Dish TV guys, they're distributors exactly sort of in the same way as, you know, the telcos are providing the content right now. But I mean, you're saying that so many channels coexist. You have so many channels on a dish. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Whereas here, there's a wallet share which is so important. Like, I mean, the wallet is probably the most important part of anybody's existence in these changing times. And you're asking them to share their wallet with you, which is a very big ask to begin with. And then you're asking them to stick on. So it's a very big challenge. I mean, I think that a good recommendation engine helps. Good consumer targeting helps. And of course, you have to keep refreshing content. So there is, any of these platforms will have different kinds of content. You'll have your hero content, which is your driver, which is the Sacred Games. But then you'll also have, you know, some reality, you'll have some sports. So you have to have, and then your acquired movies, your acquired TV shows, right? So there's different kinds of content. You have to constantly keep enticing the consumers. You essentially, statistically, even now, around, I think, basically, I think 80% consumers today don't have more than 2 OTTs that they've subscribed to. 2, 3, you know, I think 2.5 is the average, I don't know, right? So that's what it is. So it is extremely, that's what I was saying, it's really tough getting them and then getting them to stick on. It's because, you know, you unsubscribe very quickly. That's the problem with this, right? So I don't honestly have an exact answer, but I think also what I forgot to touch upon there is there is going to be a huge amount of regional content. I think that, you know, that's also going to help. There's going to be a lot of regional, relatable content. As you know, unlike several other countries, there is no one India. There isn't. There are so many different Indias, right? So there has to be content provided for different kinds of people. You have to cater to them at the end of the day. So I guess that, I don't know if that answers your question. You were saying, how do you get subscribers and them on? Is that what you were asking?
And managing so many OTTs from the consumer side, it is sometimes it is difficult.
It's difficult to keep up. There's too many
apps, yes, and then managing their subscriptions, yes, it is sometimes.
Yeah. So there needs to be a
Tata Sky
which will give you all the apps in one place.
Exactly. That's
Yeah. And that'll happen. I think that'll happen. But isn't Fire Stick? Does a Fire Stick do that?
Fire Stick,
I think they
gives
do
you, you can get all of it, but you still have to subscribe. You still have to subscribe.
You have to subscribe,
But
yes.
my question,
that's true. You want an aggregator, somebody who's going to get
Exactly,
everything
exactly,
for you and
exactly.
then give it to you. Yeah, there will be. I think there will be one soon. Who
Isn't
will
that-
subscribe for you on your behalf?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just one subscription and I'm sorted for all.
Yeah.
Isn't that happening already with
The telcos.
telcos
Yeah.
bundling stuff into your...
Yeah.
They
That's
do
the
not have the
bundling.
prime and premium content.
Not
if
the
you
prime
say,
premium.
It'll happen.
But
I think it's going to happen soon. You will get content.
Yeah. So one thing is, of course, you need to have a sort of a TV platform or a platform which can keep all that content together and keep it in a way that you can view it across multiple devices seamlessly. So you get the same UI or a UX on your small screen versus what you see on the TV. So there is technology. There are technology solutions available who will enable that. That's one. And the second thing is, how do you keep the subscriber hooked on to what you are offering? And that's where, the recommendation engine, making sure that what what I want to watch, I can quickly find. That's where all the analytics is important. But that brings in, actually, I should have touched upon it in my, when I was up there, is the legal and the ethical aspect of privacy. Right now, there is so much of data being mined. We talk about big data and all, but the challenge is, where do you draw the line? Now, as a subscriber or as a consumer, am I comfortable for the various OTT players to exactly know what I would like to watch, when I watch, where I watch? But that's privacy. In India, unfortunately, the privacy laws are not that strong, but then we are hearing so much about the big fines being imposed on Google and on Facebooks and of the world. That's basically and with EU GDPR coming in, at least in EU, you have to be very careful about what you are storing for your subscribers, right? So, but then the thing is, with all that analytics available, you can actually do a predictive analysis of when I want to latch on next time, what is it that I want to watch? And if I can find that content immediately when I log in, I will stay there. But if I have to go and search for it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'll say, okay, maybe I go and watch somewhere else. Correct. So it's there, but then it has to be robust enough. Yes.
If I may add something, I think my understanding, this monetization in OTT is also it's a long-term game, So if you just look at it from the content point of view, the very mechanics of the content that comes and how it works. I mean, why do episodes have cliffhangers? So you come back. Why does a season end portending a second season? So that you come back, And often also, if we all look at our habits, we subscribe to a Netflix or an Amazon because of certain particular shows that we want to keep watching, right? Now, what I also learned was while engaging with Netflix is that, and I never realized this on my own, but what I see advertised to me on Netflix, it'll be different from what you see. I mean, like if I've been watching Peaky Blinders and if I've been watching a lot of sort of bhai type shows, then I'll see two guys. I'll see Gaitonde and Sartaj Singh. Whereas if I've been watching a lot of rom-coms, I'll see Cuckoo, depending on what I watch. So it's all really geared towards each particular user and to keep them on for long enough so that the subscription eventually becomes a high value proposition,
How you see, hi, I'm Rashesh Purohit from Sri Adhikari Brothers. How you see digital OTT journey and how you compare broadcasting with digital?
You're of course from television and film, we all know you. It's, how do I compare it? At the end of the day, content is content. And you get into the content creation business because you love creating content. So eventually it's the same, but I think technically, of course, the rating system in TV is very, very aggressive, as we all know. Thursday is a very important day because that's the day that you get massacred or you get whatever. So that doesn't exist in digital yet. I think there's a lot more freedom, honestly, so far, although I do believe that censorship will kick in and will come in a very big way very soon. And I think it has already happened. There are a few cases. Supreme Court is sitting on it. But, so I think censorship will come in, but as of now, still, there is much more freedom to tell the stories that you want to tell and the way you want to tell them. As we all know, TV is very limiting. It has become very limiting. And TV also plays very, very strictly to its audience. So it's really become all about the numbers. It's become all about the advertisers. Because it's a very, very advertiser-dependent business in India. It's not subscription. So when the advertiser sort of rules the content, then it all becomes about numbers. So I think that is that's why I got out of TV, because it was getting a bit frustrating. Because you're really not, by the end of the day, telling the stories you want to tell. So that's what happened. But having said that, I have a lot of respect for TV. It has the reach that TV has, the number of people that watch TV still, of course, I mean, is bigger than any other medium, like I just said. But that, and I think technically the other thing is that TV, although I wouldn't say that typically of Indian television, but I have noticed in, like, say, an American, like an HBO show, I have noticed that, like Vasant said, their end of the episode, the hang points, etc., this is just a technical craft part of how it's different, I feel are very, very strong in TV. Because you need the person to come back, not 1 second later, but come back a week later. So I have noticed that if you take a comparison of, say, Netflix and you take HBO, and you compare the two shows and you really get into the writing, I think that HBO shows, in terms of that, cliffhangers, hook points, hang points, are stronger. So I think this is a habit that is coming in because of binge. So binge content making creates a very strong first act and a very strong last. I have a lot of content creators who come in, writers who come in and say, I know how it'll start, I know how it'll end. Wo beech ka we'll figure. So the middle somehow hangs a little bit loose still, I feel. But in TV, you can't afford to do that. Each episode, each hang point has to be really, really strong because your telecast format is such. Here, everything is out together. So you know that within 5 seconds, the next episode will open. So the viewer's not really going anywhere. You know what I mean? So I think technically that, but otherwise, I think freedom, that's it. Well, how is creating content or digital different from TV? It's just, there's just more space to say things which are more real, which are really happening right now. People are not black and white. You know what I mean? People are gray, and it's okay, like Vasant said also. So that kind of space, storytelling. Yeah.
So future-wise is, my question is again, broadcasting compared to digital future-wise. Because the broadcasting technologies are very, very costly, as everybody know, and distribution cost is also a huge cost of in broadcasting. So compared to digital, there is no distribution cost.
So one thing I would like to add here is that technology is going to be the operating word here. Through technology, we are going to be, serving the content in a personalized and a more contextual manner. Look at it something like the way Google currently serves the content to you, right? When you do a search and that search result, those SERPs are improving by every passing day. It's becoming more and more contextual to your relevant search. This is precisely what is going to happen in the digital space also, whether we talk about OTT and VOD. Currently in broadcast, you are delivering what you would like to deliver. You would get a larger picture of what the consumer is looking at, but eventually in digital, you have the opportunity to engage with the customer to a certain extent and use technology like AI to see what is his search preference, what are the kind of programs, like Vasant said, they have been watching, and then serve something which is more of relevance to him. This is going to work both ways, from the supply as well as from the demand side. From the demand side, the consumer is able to demand what he's actually looking at. there's going to be a lot of targeting and personalization around it. And this is also going to impact the advertising revenue. So that is where the larger aspect of monetization is also going to come through. So,
may I add something to that? Yeah. So, you know, sir, I think that just the experimentation that has taken place on, you know, storytelling in the OTT platforms, I think that it's also revealing a lot about the kind of stories that people want to consume. And I think that technology is definitely going to shape how it evolves, you know. So Nisarg and I are also colleagues in a different sense, that his company, Tulsea, they represent many writers. And, you know, one of the things that before Netflix and others came, you know, they were already telling us that, you know, shows are going to be the next thing, so start studying it. So the other thing that Tulsea keeps telling me and bugging me about is that study AI, study, no, not AI, sorry, study VR, study virtual reality, study those things, because now people are going to start using those technologies and they're going to want stories through that. And you know, you can already see certain things changing, because if you've seen the show Bandersnatch on Netflix, Black Mirror, I mean, suddenly now, suddenly it's an interactive story. People want to participate. And so, because technology is evolving to give everybody an immersive experience, and I'm telling you, there's a precedent for this already. We all can see a tendency towards snackable content. We want chota things that people have, you know, 5 minutes to watch, they can consume. But also, people want to remain in the world of a story that they like for as long as possible, which is why you have 7 seasons of shows, which is why you also have this type of show called a slow burner, right? Where the story moves at a much slower pace, but the audience wants to be in there. So I think from this precedent, I can say that given a chance for you to use your mobile phone in a way where you can be standing next to George Clooney, you know, and talking to him, you know, or the opposite for the guys, or not. Yeah, I mean, you will want it. So, you know, I think that the future really has its eyes on digital because of the way technology is also advancing. Yes.
So, yeah, so from a technology perspective also, so, you know, broadcasting, yes, you know, traditionally has been obviously more expensive, it's more capex driven and all, but then the technology is also evolving. We are already moving away from just, you know, transmitting over satellite links back to the studio to all IP based transmission also, which cuts down your cost significantly. You can also, you know, do microservice based architecture to reduce your capex investment and also take TV as a service, for example. So those are the technology advancements that are already happening and will continue to evolve to sort of bring the cost perspective closer to what you say on a digital front. But then on the digital front also, what I talked about earlier is there is still a challenge in terms of how do you bring that type of the video experience or the digital content you know, on OTT platform still leaves a lot to be desired in terms of the quality or the experience that the user is getting. So both of them will come closer. There is going to be, I would say, an amalgamation or a little bit of, you know, coming closer, but both of them will continue to remain. It is not that, you know, one is going to kill off the other. It all depends on, you know, at the end of the day, the consumer, what he or she wants to, you know, experience.
Hi, this question is for Anurag actually. So Anurag, you spoke about a lot of future technologies to deliver content, right? All are futuristic, I wouldn't say future, it's futuristic technology. So what are the challenges that you foresee if Indian market is to embrace those technologies at present? Do you foresee any challenges in the market?
sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yeah, so those futuristic technologies that you spoke about to deliver the content, so what are the challenges that you foresee for Indian market to embrace those technologies currently? Do you foresee any challenges?
You know, honestly, I think we have transcend all the borders. So pretty much what India has embraced today in terms of technology with regard to the consumption of content, whether it's digital or even through the broadcast means, OTT and VOD. The technology is pretty much same across the borders now. While a lot of innovation and development might be still happening in the Western world, but India is embracing all of these technology pretty much, I would say, on a real-time basis. So I really don't see a huge challenge for the embracing of technology in India from a global perspective. The technology is going to be there. Whether the innovation is happening in India or not, that is something that is to be seen.
But cost factor is still there, right?
Well, again, like Roshni also said, cost, they would need to be amortized over a period of time. So when we talk about embracing these technology, a lot of these international platforms like Amazon and Netflix, they have already stepped into the country. And I was just reading an interview from the Netflix CEO the other day, and they have very, very big plans for India. That is where he spoke about, embracing the languages. So while Netflix have a lot of, language options globally, they're still toying with the idea of how to get into the deeper markets, using the vernacular and the language means. So in terms of developing the technology for the local players here, look at Jio. Now they're coming in with the kind of money power they have backing them up. It could be anybody's guess how they're going to be changing the game. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, just to sort of add on to that, if you really look at, do you really bother about how much data you're consuming on your mobiles anymore? See, there was
not really.
even now, if you go to US markets, you pay some $50 for about 10 GB of data.
Correct.
Here you get it at literally throwaway prices. You don't even bother about that, right? So in terms of, we have a unique opportunity to sort of leapfrog in a lot of ways, because frankly, India is always going to be a mobile first market, because you won't get the reach through traditional, wired connections and all. So everything has to go on the mobile. The technology has to evolve. How do you get that content to all those small screens over a mobile network in a way that it really, makes it people to still watch on a small screen rather than going on a linear TV. So there is definitely opportunity there. I think we will be there pretty fast, much earlier than a lot of other markets also.
Yeah, mobile content is definitely emerging.
Yeah.
Vasant, you spoke about languages not being a barrier anymore when it comes to content, digital content. So my question is how important it is to understand the psyche of audience basis when you write something for Netflix in Hindi, and probably when you write something for Netflix in a Marathi or Gujarati or anything else. So how different would you look into writing content and delivering it to a particular region or mass globally?
So I think that this is why for shows there is a writer's room, because there are so many levels of expertise that are necessary. There is one level of expertise which is necessary only in terms of storytelling. And that doesn't matter what your prime language is. It's just your understanding of the mechanics of story. Then there is also an understanding of tone of your show, for where it's targeted and nuance. And usually your lead writer, who we call, or what we call a showrunner, who is a director and a writer, sometimes both, or somebody who is basically the keeper of the vision of the show, they have to have a very thorough understanding of the tone. And I think in all of these things, you can't fake it. You have to have lived experience. So for us on Sacred Games, we relied a lot on Varun Grover and his understanding of the India outside the cities. His life has been a pretty interesting one. So he drew very heavily from that. So each of, I think that there are enough people out there with this expertise. And I'll just, refer back to something that Roshni had mentioned, that we really need schools, not just to teach people how to write. I think that people have stories to tell. They're dying to tell them. And, people have even come on their own accord come up with an expertise on how to tell a story. But in order to work in a collaborative environment with other writers, which is the norm of today, a writer's room, we have a long way to go in institutionalizing that as something which is efficient. So like Chiranjeev said, we need efficient delivery mechanisms, efficient technology that make the process not blatant, so expensive that nobody can afford it. Even with the writers, you need an efficient process. And we are on that learning curve right now. We came in cold in Sacred Games. So it took a lot of patience, but no one's going to give anybody else 11 months to write a show anymore. Nobody's going to do it. So, we need to really, as a community, share these experiences between each other so that everybody doesn't keep running into the same obstacles. But we need schools, we need people who are coming in from the start, knowing this and then coming and picking up the experience. So it's going to take a while before it gets there.
Thank you. And also, do you think language also affects the business? I mean, a show in Hindi, because it's a subscription-based model, digital consumers. Yeah. So it affects the business largely when you talk about subscribers in regional languages and in Hindi, or the kind of content that you write, which caters to a North India, or maybe you would see a South Indian audience being more affirmative to that.
Look, I mean, at the end, it's subscribers that you're looking for, right? So reach is very important. Also, I think that the audience, the first thing that they smell is inauthenticity. So, that is why you have to, if you are going to say that you're coming in from a realistic tone and you use the wrong inflection of Hindi in the wrong context, the moment you smell that, you'll stop watching. Going by what we spoke about mechanics, I think all of us take the decision whether we are going to watch a show till the end episode within the first 5 or 10 minutes that we watch the first episode, So absolutely. By then after that you'll become more forgiving. In the first 10 minutes, if you smell inauthenticity, you will be completely unforgiving because you have 20 more things that you can choose. Yes. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. Anybody? If you all want to ask something to each other. Vasant, Chiranjeev, nothing at all?
Yeah, since nobody is asking, so I thought let me ask one question. I'm here. So my question is for Roshni. When you look at the different OTT platforms today, whether it is Netflix or OTT service rather, whether it is Netflix and Amazon, as compared to the Indian OTT services, All Balaji, Eros, Voot, and the other OTT services. And if you see the maturity of the content, how do you rate, the original content created for the Indian viewers versus the content that is there or the shows that are there on Netflix or Amazon Prime?
When you say Netflix and Amazon Prime, are you talking about the non-Indian shows?
Exactly. The subjects, basically. The maturity of the subject, basically.
I think that, it's, like I was saying earlier, it's a very mature content creators space as well. Like I was saying, with the example of the US, I was trying to say the evolution of content has happened so organically and over, as I was trying to say, like from network TV, there was cable, and then there was, Netflix. So there has been, content has evolved, the levels have evolved. I think in India, we've done that jump, like I was trying to say, is that from TV, and in fact, actually, I want to mention here that if you look at TV as we had it many years ago, we had Doordarshan, and when the satellite channels had just come in, like say Z, we had pretty good shows. We had really good shows. You know, we had shows which are similar to what we're trying to create now, perhaps not in terms of the gloss and the slickness and the technique, but definitely in terms of the stories, right? We had a Chunauti, which was completely about drug abuse on, you know, the campus, which I remember I was a kid when I watched it and it was pretty dark. It was quite dark, that show, right? You had some feminist shows like Shanti and Tara, etc., which had grey characters. The women were grey characters. And, you know, people loved those shows back then, right? But then something happened to television in our country, didn't it? Like, I think that television sort of, after that, we started regressing. You know, and I think somewhere the standard of stories as well as storytelling became repetitive, became predictable, and we lost what we had. There was a time when Shyam Benegal was directing episodes of TV shows, you know, Binod Pradhan was shooting them, you know, Nasiruddin Shah was acting in them, you know that, right? So I think we have been there. So I know that we are creators of very rich content and we are very good storytellers. We have great stories to tell. But I think the evolution from where we sort of, I'm not going to say down or up or whatever, but the place that we ended up in and are in right now in television. And if we take that sort of as our most recent, why television? Let's look at cinema as well. How star-skewed has that become, right? I mean, we've had two big films this year where the stars were marketed, not the characters, and they didn't do well. They didn't do well at all, right? The people essentially completely slammed those films, right? Thugs and what was the Shah Rukh film called? Zero. So I'm saying, and on the other hand, you had a Stree doing well. There's 3 as well? Race 3 as well. Sorry, I missed that one. Yeah, so that is complete then. So we have all 3 over there, all the 3 Khans, the big stars. And the smaller ones did really well. So I think that it's there. I think we can do it well, but I do agree with you that there's a long way to go. And I think one important step is, like Vasant just said, is that, you know, talent needs to be trained in this country. Talent needs to be groomed. I know it's there, but writing, there is a craft to it. And the craft has to be learned. You know, discipline has to be brought in. The problem here is that this is another problem that I found when I moved from YouTube content to sort of SWOD and OTT content, is that there is this hankering for Bollywood content creators, you know, which is very sad, because if you look at a Netflix internationally, look at who was Claire Foy before The Crown happened, you know, or who was, oh my God, I can't believe I've forgotten his name. I'm a huge fan, Pablo. Wagner Moura. Who was Wagner Moura? We didn't know who he was. But look what they did to him. They made him a household face and name and person and character. I think that, and I'm going to be completely honest here, that it's a fantastically written show. It's a great show, Sacred Games. And I think so far it's probably the best that we've achieved, right? But I think what Netflix did with Sacred Games, going after the big Bollywood names, the big Bollywood stars, I was personally a little bit disappointed there, because they don't do that elsewhere. Because elsewhere the focus is the story, is the content, is the creator and how he wants to say it. There is that liberty. Because like I said, I did a workshop with Chris Brancato, who was the co-creator of Narcos, and he told me and he told us there, that when they were making Narcos, they were very worried that Netflix would want it to be 70% in English. So they, you know, the skew would be on English, right? And then when they went in, of course, I mean, the reason later was that they wanted to penetrate that market. But the thing is that they said, no, just keep it to whatever you want. So it was 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever you want, the Spanish and English skew, right? So, I mean, there is more liberty there. They are, I think, in India, we do a lot of lazy casting. We take the first person we can think of, the biggest star we can think of. You know, we think, the minute you say, my budget for the show is 20 crores, suppose, how are you going to justify it? Who's the star in it? this conventional approach has to change. You know what I mean? You don't always have to market stars, you can market characters. I really believe that. And a lot of TV has done that. TV typically has done that, right? You've marketed an Anil Kapoor in what was 24, and then you've marketed an Anandi from Balika Vadhu, and Anandi has done better. So you know what I mean? So I mean, all that, I don't know why there is that hankering for the stars, for Bollywood. The only people who can create content in this country are Bollywood people. No, that's not true. So I think when that starts changing, when new writers start coming in, fresh talent starts coming in, you know, and we start looking at things in a more localized way. We stop trying to be Narcos, we stop trying to be Crown, we stop, you know, we have to stop also saying that, oh, but, you know, Netflix has great content internationally, you know, or Amazon has great content, you know. We have to do more localized content. We have to tell more Indian stories. We have to tell them with authenticity. And I think we're going to get there, you know, I think we're going to get there.
Sure, thank you.
We were just talking this morning, Roshni, of this fantastic film that we saw called Sony. Yes. You know, if you've seen that film on Netflix,
and if you haven't,
yeah, please watch it. I mean, you won't see a single known face in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the last 5 days, I have spoken to 10 different people about that film, you know, and it's something that I'm truly proud of, to have, you know, that kind of a story to have emerged from it. It got me so excited. And I think that's what you're talking about, right? Roshni?
Completely undermarketed. Nobody was aware of it. The person who made the film just made it with his own money and his own passion. Netflix bought it later. It was not commissioned. I met the actor, purely theater background, never done a movie before. And you have to watch that film. It just hits the right spot. So I think there will be content like that, and there is some content like that. It's just that it's not thrown at you the way the hero content is thrown at you, whether it's an Inside Edge or whether it's a Sacred Games. But it's there, and there will be more of it. I'm hopeful.
Also, you know, I mean, this kind of content, like Roshni said, that that person dug into their own pockets to make it, you know. Why did independent film die in this country? Is because nobody supported it. The government didn't support it. I mean, so many films that we see from around the world, which are fantastic. I mean, in the UK, the National Lottery supports independent films, you know. So there is a backing, and there is people recognize the importance of this. I think that we also need to start recognizing the importance of having our local stories. Given that support, it's not, at the end of the day, you don't need to spend a huge chunk of change. You can make them quite cheap. You just need to have conviction behind those voices and have confidence in the kind of reach that that story will have. You know, and I think that we'll get there. And I
think the last year was quite encouraging if you look at the movie trend. I think it was quite encouraging because I think clearly the taste of the people, and that's where it'll all come from. Eventually, it's really about the people who are going to watch it. It's their preference. It's what they are going to eventually put their money on. And I think this last year has been quite encouraging for all of us because we've seen that, no, they prefer content to stars. They prefer stories to stars. So,
when it comes to movies, yes, there has been a lot of change, right? There are a lot of new stars or actors, I would say, you know, who have been part of very great content. But when it comes to OTT services and the kind of shows which are there today, I would say 80% of them, when we start watching them, we know what is the story going to be there, right? That is not the case with some of the content, you know, that is available on Amazon Prime or Netflix. It is very, very, you know, gripping, and you don't know what you are going to see in the next episode. For example, like Mirzapur, you know, was a very, very good show, right? It was more regional, you know, and it was the way it was made, or Sacred Games, right? It was very, very good. A lot of violence, lot of content which was not required, but maybe it was because it was regional. But if you see Mac Mafia, another show on Amazon, right? You will see that, you know, it is again from the underworld content side, but the way they have told the story, it is more strategic rather than more violence actually. So the maturity of content still, you know, I think it differs a lot.
I agree with you, sir.
Yeah.
I do. And there is, we're trying to sort of change that, and I do agree with you. It's true.
Sure.
And but like I'm trying to say, I think a lot of it is many years of studying, learning, watching, being mentored, which
Agreed.
I think a lot of creators here are not getting or have not got. But I mean, let's hope, but I do agree with you that we do have a long way to go.
No, we are with you. We have patience, actually.
Yeah, maturity is a function also of eventually giving up, letting go of your crutches, you know. So I think that given the training and the experience, I think that's where we are headed. It's just the confidence to actually start cycling without the training wheels. You know, the training wheels being the things that you know that work every time. Sex, violence, so on, you know, conventional stories. You feel that it works every time. You're not confident enough, rely on it. But, you know, we now know other things work as well. And I think that confidence will grow, I believe.
So what kind of changes while writing you are expecting post those guidelines will come?
It's anybody's guess, really. I mean, we try and, you know, the worst thing that you can do is self-censor while you write, because, you know, it's death for your idea. You know, I think that you fight each battle as it comes, and if you do that early in the game, I mean, you're going to be stuck with half-baked content. So, you know, I think that people have to be responsible. You know, people, I mean, if you watch a show and if you know, if you feel something is unnecessary, like I told you, as an audience, you're the first people to smell inauthenticity, you know. If you feel that there is authenticity over there, you will allow for it, you know. So we rely on that at the end of it, you know, and I think that that's what leads to good sense prevailing. So it's a game of delicate balance, and yeah. So I mean, like I said, what happens is, what will you? Well, it's you know, some of the most powerful cinema has come out of Poland, which is you know, which had a very strict stance on anything against the government, you know. So at the end of the day, there are many ways in which you can get what you want to say across if you use your, you know, you more than one way to do it. So I think that our writers will continue to do that in any case, you know, and there will obviously be a time where you'll feel that, oh God, now what do I write? But like I said, we'll fight those battles when we get there. You know, right now I think is a time to really not hold back and go for it.
There's a lot of young people here. Just to wrap up, I mean, since we've said so much, I just wanted to hear a little bit also. Might as well pick up some insights from here. I just wanted to, yes, sure. You want to ask a question? I think reality is going to be very big. There's going to be a lot of reality content. There's going to be a lot of non-fiction content very soon. Started with fiction. But I think there are some original non-fiction shows as well. I think Amazon has a Comic Stan, which is a comedy show. Oh no, are you talking about international shows or Indian shows?
I'm talking about non-entertainment shows.
Non-entertainment shows like documentaries?
Yeah, it could be.
But are you talking about
Indian? It could be any other kind of verticals that we could be looking at, which are not to do with
there are
pure
documentaries.
So right now OTT is fully flooded only with entertainment. Is there any specific reason for that, and could we not look at anything outside that sphere also as using the same platforms?
But there's news as well, there's sports as well. Hotstar has all of these.
Okay.
Any OTT which is like a catch-up TV, which has TV channels, will also give you news and will give you all their different channels. So you'll have the entire bouquet on the OTT. So,
so right
it's
now
content around content.
Yeah, the only difference being that what we have catch-up TV is only what you have in TV, which is just being shown, right?
Yes.
It's not content prepared for OTT.
So exactly what are you talking about? And
so I'm talking about, as you said, some of the other aspects which are prepared specifically. So the writing, specifically my question is when we really look at...
But the thing is that whatever it is, whether it's, even news is entertainment these days, isn't it? Like it has to still be entertaining.
News
like,
is more entertainment.
News is, yeah, more entertaining than some of the entertainment shows.
News is more fiction than reality.
Yeah. So exactly. So I mean, entertainment is just a format. So I mean, it can be a documentary, it can be news, it can be sports, it can be anything.
Yeah,
all of
idea
it
is
will
stories.
be available.
The idea is
there'll be
stories.
cooking shows, there'll be comedy shows, there'll be serious documentaries on serious subjects. I think there is one already, an Indian documentary called Karma Killings, which is on Netflix. Sony is, of course, entertaining. So if it's not entertaining, you're not going to watch it. That is the problem. So whatever I'm saying, I have to make it entertaining.
So my question to you would be, you have OTT platforms which have got all kinds of content. I'm talking about can one kind of content be curated into an OTT platform? That's my question.
Yeah, sure, it can be, but I mean, it would be difficult because you'd need a huge volume of content. So to get so much content of just one kind, because I am not going to subscribe and pay you money just for 2 shows or 3 shows. I will then, if you want me to stick on, you'll have to provide me with a whole bunch of things that I can do while I'm at your platform. So to get all of that of one kind might be a bit of a challenge, but I think you can. Why not? Why not? Maybe it will all get super specialized at some point.
Okay.
I don't know. But I just wanted to know, since there are quite a few young people in this room as well, and just generally for everyone, how many people in this room think that there should be some amount of censorship of the content that is on digital right now? Of no one, 0. That's amazing. Great, okay, thank you.
I think that's all the time that we have today. I'd like to thank all our panelists for sharing their thoughts, and I'd like to thank everybody in the audience for asking insightful questions and being a part of this panel discussion. Thank you.
We sincerely value your inputs and appreciate all the time and efforts on your part. With this, we conclude a very interesting and interactive session on future of digital content. May I now please request Mr. Malde to hand over a token of appreciation to all our distinguished speakers. To start with Mr. Vasant Nath, writer, Sacred Games. Please give him a big round of applause. Ms. Roshni Ghosh, VP India, Original Content, Eros Now. Mr. Chiranjeevi Singh, Director Marketing, APAC, MediaKind, formerly Ericsson TV also. Mr. Anurag Mittal, Founder and CEO, NewsVoir. Now, I, on behalf of Exhibitions India Group, would like to present a memento to Mr. Malde.